There's a specific kind of darkness you only find deep in the Appalachian Mountains. Not just the absence of light, the absence of everything. No signal, no traffic, no other people. Just the ridge, just the hollow, just the trees closing in around you like a fist. In March 2023, 4 people drove into that darkness with cameras, equipment, and a plan. The plan was simple. Document the most notorious abandoned hospital in Appalachian history. Play a few scary games for content and drive home before sunrise. The games were easy. What came after the games was not. This is the story of what happened to Kael Verness, and why, to this day, he has never uploaded a single second of that footage. It was a Wednesday, not a Friday, not some dramatic story-ready evening, a plain Wednesday in early March, the kind where the sky can't decide if it wants to snow or just stay gray forever. Kael was 26, and he was running out of time. His YouTube channel had 47,000 subscribers and a 6-month content drought, and he owed rent, and somewhere underneath all of that was a music career that had ended without ever really ending. Just faded, the way a signal does when you drive too far from the tower. This trip wasn't adventure. It was a last resort. His crew was 3 people. Petra, a forensic researcher who believed before she doubted, always. Lynx, the equipment lead, who counted the exits the moment he walked into any room. And Rosie, their local fixer, hired through a mutual contact that neither Kael nor Petra could fully remember anymore. She knew every back road in 3 counties. She'd gotten them up here without a GPS. Whitmore State Hospital sat on 50 acres of Appalachian Ridge, closed in 1989 and never demolished. 5 main buildings, a basement morgue, a perimeter fence that had collapsed in sections like a broken jaw. The nearest cell tower was 3 ridgelines away. The nearest town was 40 minutes by car on roads that didn't appear on Google Maps. They hadn't been on the grounds 10 minutes when Lynx stopped walking. He was standing at the edge of the recreation yard, pointing at something half buried in the overgrowth. A Kroger delivery crate. Sealed. Stamped with a date. Today's date. Kael filmed it. Rosie photographed it. Inside the crate, MREs, bottled water, and a clipboard with a single checked box next to the notation M 3.27.23. Someone had been here today. Someone official had been here today. Lynx said they should leave. Petra said it was probably a squatter, maybe a city inspector. Kael said it was the best opening shot they'd ever captured. The man who had unlocked the gate for them, Ashton Kemp, 60-something, former maintenance worker, Rosie's contact, had said almost nothing on the drive up. Now he pulled Kael aside at the fence line. He didn't warn them about ghosts. He didn't say the place was haunted. He said, people died in there. Some of them didn't have the courtesy to leave. Then he walked back to his truck and drove into the tree line without a goodbye, without a number to call, without looking back once. Kael watched the truck disappear. The forest swallowed it completely. The sky was dropping fast. The trees were bare and March gray, and the forest around the perimeter was perfectly, completely, wrongly silent. No birds, no wind, nothing. That silence was the first thing that didn't sit right with him. It would not be the last. The game was Kael's idea, which meant it was also his fault. Murder in the dark. A Victorian parlor game. One person plays the murderer, one plays the detective, everyone else is a potential victim. You kill in the dark with a tap on the shoulder. Simple. Creepy enough to be content. Safe enough to feel stupid about being scared. They drew cards. Kael got detective, Petra got murderer. Lynx and Rosie were victims. The rules were straightforward. Kael closes his eyes and counts down from 30. Petra moves east across the recreation yard. Lynx moves west. Rosie stays stationary at center with the camera, a fixed point in 50 yards of open dark. All lights off. The eastern wall of the hospital rose behind them, 5 stories of broken windows and water-stained concrete. The tree line pressed in on the other 3 sides, close enough that the branches overhead blocked out what little gray was left in the March sky. Kael shut his eyes and started counting. 30, 29, 28. Lynx moved west the way they'd agreed. 30 yards of dead grass between him and the trees. Enough space for the game to breathe. Enough darkness to make it feel real. 20, 19, 18. Then Lynx heard it. From the western tree line, from behind him, close, a whisper. 2 words, soft and certain. You're dead. Not Petra's voice, not Rosie's. A child's voice, a little girl's. Close enough that it should have been breath on the back of his neck. Lynx turned. Nothing at the tree line. No small figure in the dark. No movement at all. Just the trees and the silence, and 30 yards of open ground between him and where Rosie was standing with the camera. He screamed. Not a game scream. Not the kind of yell you do when someone jumps out at a haunted house. The kind that comes out of a person before their brain has caught up to what their body already knows. Kael's eyes opened. He sprinted. Lynx was on the ground when they reached him, hyperventilating, both hands pressed flat against the dead grass like he needed to feel something solid. Petra was still moving east. She hadn't heard anything, she said. Rosie had the camera up and her face behind it, which meant her expression was unreadable, which meant Kael couldn't tell what she'd seen. Petra said Lynx had scared himself. She said it matter-of-factly, the way she said most things, and under normal circumstances, Kael would have believed her. Lynx was jumpy. Lynx always counted the exits, but Lynx was not a person who screamed. They turned the lights back on. Flashlights cutting across the recreation yard, across the tree line, across the perimeter fence. Nothing there. No child. No footprints in the mud near the trees. No sign of anything. Kael was ready to call it. 2 votes to leave, him and Lynx. They'd pack the gear, hike back to the car, and he'd figure out the content drought some other way. Then Rosie came back from the main entrance. She'd slipped inside while they were on the ground with Lynx. She hadn't said anything. She'd just gone in, the way Rosie did things, quietly, efficiently, without asking. She had a ledger in her hands, a staff ledger, bound in cracked brown leather, the kind that hospitals used to use before everything went digital. 1984, stamped on the spine. She opened it to a page near the back and held it out. 1 entry, circled in the margin, in handwriting so faint it could have been pencil, or something else entirely. Patricia Morse, age 8, pediatric ward. Status, deceased. No cause of death listed. No follow-up notation. 4 words in the margin, in that same faint hand. She never left. Kael looked at it for a long time. Patricia Morse had died in that building in 1984. His crew had been standing in that recreation yard in 2023. 39 years between those 2 dates. So whose voice had Lynx heard? 11 p.m. Kael's phone had 1 bar and 12% battery. Rosie's was dead. Petra had signal but no service, the kind of useless indicator that just means the phone hasn't given up yet. Lynx's screen was cracked across the middle, a spiderweb fracture that nobody remembered happening, and the flashlight app kept cutting out every few minutes like it was thinking about quitting. Nobody said it out loud, but the math was simple. They weren't driving home in the dark on roads that didn't exist on any map. Not with Lynx still shaking. Not with the sky this low and the temperature dropping the way March temperatures drop in the mountains, fast and personal, like the cold has somewhere specific to be. The plan was the second floor. One room. Barricade the door and wait for gray light. Simple. They moved to the main hospital building. The front doors were chained. Not with old rusted chain, the kind you'd expect on a building that had been sitting empty since 1989. New chain. Oiled hinges. A padlock dated 2022, half buried under a layer of spray-painted graffiti that read, "Keep out/structural hazard," in blocky red letters. Kael crouched and looked at the padlock. Then he looked at Petra. Then back at the lock. The chain faced inward. The lock mechanism faced inward. Whoever had secured these doors had done it from inside the building and left through another exit. That wasn't how you locked a building to keep trespassers out. That was how you locked a building to keep something in. Nobody said that either. They found a broken side window around the east wall, low enough to climb through. Lynx went first, then Petra, then Rosie, then Kael. The frame scraped against his jacket on the way in. The sound was too loud in the silence. Inside, the ground floor corridor smelled like standing water and old plaster, and something underneath both of those things that Kael couldn't name and didn't want to. The flashlight beams cut through the dark in long, pale strips. Peeling paint. Collapsed ceiling tiles. A nurse's station with the counter still intact. Paperwork still fanned across it like someone had just stepped away. Then Lynx's light hit the floor. Wet footprints. Fresh ones. Dark against the dusty concrete, moving from the direction of the main entrance inward, toward the basement stairwell. The prints were elongated. The weight impressions were wrong. Too many per stride, distributed in a way that didn't match any normal human gait. Petra said it was a squatter. She said it calmly, the way she always said things, already moving toward the prints to get a better look. A squatter, or someone doing an inspection. Someone who had every right to be here and probably knew the building better than they did. Lynx said he was not following those prints. He said it once, quietly, and didn't say it again. Kael said they were going upstairs. Ignore the prints. Second floor, one room, wait for sunrise. Rosie wasn't listening to any of it. She was standing at the far end of the corridor, in the doorway of the ground floor office, staring at something on the corkboard. Kael crossed to her. On the board, pinned under a rusted thumbtack, a maintenance schedule. Printed. Recent paper, no yellowing, no curl at the edges. March 2023. This week, tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. Supply delivery. South wing only. Do not deviate. The silence that followed was different from the silence outside. The outside silence had been an absence. This one had weight. This one meant something. Whitmore State Hospital had been fully decommissioned since 1989. No patients, no staff, no listed operations of any kind for over 30 years. Someone had printed that schedule this week. Someone was expecting a delivery at 6 a.m., and someone had gone to significant lengths to make sure nobody on the outside knew any of it was happening. Kael looked at the schedule, then at the basement stairwell at the end of the hall. The prints led straight to it. They made it to the second floor. Kael counted the steps on the way up because his brain needed something to do, something small and countable and real. 19 steps, a landing. A left turn into a corridor that stretched further than the flashlights could reach, doors on both sides, every one of them open except for one at the far end, which was closed, which Kael made a decision not to think about. They found a room 8 doors down on the right. A doctor's office. Desk still there. 2 chairs. A window facing the recreation yard. Gray moonlight coming through the cracked glass in a thin, pale strip. Petra shoved the desk against the door. Lynx stacked the chairs on top. It wasn't much. It was something. 12:14 a.m. Nobody slept. Kael sat on the floor with his back against the wall beneath the window, camera in his lap, 12% battery he wasn't going to waste. Lynx was in the corner with his knees pulled up. Rosie stood at the window, looking out at the recreation yard below, saying nothing. Petra had the ledger open again, reading by flashlight, like understanding the building's history was a problem she could solve if she just had enough data. Then Rosie said quietly, "Something's moving, not in the yard." Below them, on the ground floor, they all heard it at the same time, a sound that the building had not been making before. Footsteps, but wrong. The rhythm was off, uneven in a way that wasn't a limp, wasn't an injury. It was a cadence that didn't match any normal human stride. The same wrongness as those prints on the ground floor, translated now into sound, into something moving through the dark corridor directly beneath them. Then a second set, same rhythm, moving parallel to the first. Then a third. Lynx was already at the door with both hands flat against it, feeling for vibration. His face was the color of the moonlight coming through the glass. "Don't," Kael mouthed. Lynx shook his head. He wasn't going to open it. He just needed to feel if it was coming closer. It was coming closer. The stairwell was at the end of the corridor. 19 steps, a landing, a left turn. Kael counted backward in his head and understood exactly how long they had, and it wasn't long and there was nowhere to go because the window was the second floor, and the drop was 15 feet onto concrete, and that was if you landed right. The footsteps reached the stairwell. They started climbing. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The flashlights were off. Petra had killed them the moment Rosie spoke, some instinct that none of them questioned. The only light in the room was that thin strip of gray through the cracked glass, and it wasn't enough to see anything, which meant it also wasn't enough to be seen. The footsteps reached the landing. A left turn. They were in the corridor now, the same corridor, 8 doors down, and whatever was out there was at one, moving slow, no urgency, no rush, the way something moves when it already knows where it's going. Lynx's hands were shaking against the door. Kael could see it from across the room. 2, 3, 4 doors down. The sound of each footstep was wet, heavy, wrong in a way that Kael's brain kept trying to categorize and kept failing because there was no category for it, because he had never heard anything move like that before in his life. 7 doors, 8. It stopped right outside. 4 inches of wood between them and whatever was standing in that corridor, and it wasn't trying the handle, it wasn't testing the lock, it wasn't pushing, it was simply standing there on the other side of the door and breathing, heavy, wet, slow breathing that Kael could hear through the wood like the door wasn't there at all. He counted. He needed something to count. 17 minutes. For 17 minutes it stood there, breathing, not moving, not speaking, not doing anything except being present in a way that was worse than any sound it could have made, worse than any door it could have broken through, because broken doors you understand, and this he did not understand at all. Then it walked away. Same slow rhythm, back down the corridor, the stairwell, the landing, the ground floor, silence. Kael realized his hand was bleeding. At some point, he didn't know when, he had pressed his thumbnail through the skin of his palm. He hadn't felt it. He was still holding the camera. The red recording light was still on. He had filmed 17 minutes of himself sitting in the dark, too afraid to move. He never uploaded it. 5:47 a.m. Gray light through the office window. The kind of light that doesn't illuminate anything so much as it just makes the dark less absolute. Kael's hand had dried overnight, a thin rust-colored line across his palm that he kept looking at and then looking away from. The hospital had been quiet since 3 a.m. Whatever had moved through those corridors had stopped. The building had settled back into the specific kind of silence that old buildings have when they've been empty a long time, or when whatever is inside them has decided to let you go. They moved the desk, opened the door. The corridor was empty in both directions, just peeling paint and gray light, and the closed door at the far end that Kael still didn't look at directly. They went single file to the stairwell. 19 steps down, the landing, the ground floor. The wet footprints were gone, the corridor was dry. No trace, no smear, nothing to suggest anything had moved through it at all. They reached the west exit just as the delivery truck pulled up outside. One engine cutting, one door, then two. Footsteps on gravel, unhurried, professional, moving toward the south wing like they'd done it 100 times. Routine, ordinary. The sound of people who belonged there completely. They ran. Through the west exit, across the dead grass, toward the perimeter fence. The gate was padlocked. New padlock, one that hadn't been there when Ashton opened the fence 2 days ago. Lynx found a broken section 30 yards north, and they went through it fast, hands on rusted wire, nobody caring about the cuts. On the other side, Rosie stopped. She turned and looked back at the building. Kael followed her eyeline up to the 3rd floor, to the row of windows directly above the office where they'd spent the night. A figure stood in one of them. Still, not moving, just present, watching them from behind the glass with a stillness that didn't read as human, the way a scarecrow doesn't read as human even when you can't articulate exactly why. Then it stepped back from the glass. The window was empty. They walked to the road and a state-issued sedan was already there, a man in plain clothes behind the wheel who said there had been an incident, trespassing. He needed statements. 15 minutes to a sheriff's substation, not the county seat, a small building off a road with no signage. Detective Morrison was patient, professional. He talked about structural hazards and private property and liability. He said Lynx had probably panicked, found the car keys, driven out around 1:30 a.m. He slid a photograph across the desk, the Kroger crate, Rosie's photograph, and the date stamp read March 1998, not 2023. Stress does that, Morrison said. You misread dates. As they left, Rosie saw a dispatch log open on a desk in the background. Calls for Whitmore, multiple entries. All dated today. She didn't say anything. Neither did Kael. They walked to the car and drove down the mountain and didn't speak for 40 minutes. 3 weeks later, an unknown number called Kael's cell. A woman's voice, calm and courteous. Stop looking for your friend. Stop asking questions. There's nothing to find, and you're creating noise where there shouldn't be any. She hung up. That night, Kael sat in his apartment scrolling through the photos he'd kept. Just the exterior shots, nothing incriminating, nothing that would implicate anyone. He stopped on the last photo he'd taken before they went inside. 3rd floor window. A figure. Still, watching. He didn't remember seeing anyone in that window when he took the shot. He zoomed in. The resolution was too low for a face. Just a silhouette. Just the shape of something in a place that, according to every official record, had held no person in over 30 years. He didn't post it. He didn't show Petra. He didn't send it to anyone. He just sat with it. There's a specific kind of darkness you only find in the Appalachian mountains. Kael used to think it was just the geography, the ridges blocking out the light, the hollows swallowing the sound. He knows better now. The darkness isn't empty. It's maintained, actively, by people who decided a long time ago that some things are better left in the dark. And the only thing scarier than what's hidden in that hospital? Knowing it doesn't protect you from anything.